There was a time when I never thought twice about money. Not because I was rich, but because I had income and budgeted and could plan and execute without thought. If my daughter needed shoes, I bought them. If she needed a backpack, I ordered one. I made my own money. I managed my own decisions. And when that steady income disappeared, it wasn't just a paycheck I lost. It was my seat at the table of my life. Slowly, the little hesitation started. Was it okay to buy that? Should I wait? Should I ask? 1,000 small doubts replacing 1,000 small freedoms. I didn't realize I was being financially abused until a friend said it out loud. I went home, I Googled it, and out of 18 warning signs, I was living 8. One of them, not letting me make financial decisions. Another, sabotaging even the smallest choices, like buying my daughter a bike, or me asking for one, or finding out my husband secretly spent over $1,000 each out without telling me. This isn't just frustration, it's financial control. And with it being National Bike to Work Week, I realized the irony of how our 3 bikes represented 3 areas of financial abuse. It all started when one day, I was venting to a friend about how frustrated I was feeling. About finances, about decision-making, about how invisible I felt. She stopped me. She said, "You know, that's financial abuse." I laughed it off at first. I didn't believe her because, not me, I'm not a person that would tolerate abuse of any kind. But when I got home, I looked it up. Out of 18 recognized methods of financial abuse, I realized I was experiencing 8 of them. 1. Controlling how all the money is spent. 2. Not including me in banking or investment decisions. 3. Withholding money or giving an allowance. 4. Hiding assets. 5. Running up large amounts of debt on joint accounts. 6. Withholding funds for basic needs like food or medicine. 7. Not allowing access to accounts. 8. Refusing to pay bills and ruining my credit. 8 out of 18, almost half. It was sobering, it was horrifying, but it was also validating. How did I get here? I'd always worked, always made my own money until the last couple of years. When I was financially independent, I didn't even think about money. I was confident. I could plan. Life felt steady, and as predictable as life can be. But then my contract ended. Then a 6-month job came and went, and over the course of 2 years without steady work, the ground shifted under me. I tried to have an adult conversation with my husband about how my not working would impact the household income. But he refused to even acknowledge it. It was like standing at the edge of a cliff and the person next to you insists there's no drop-off. Back to the bikes. Bike story number 1. My daughter is tall, very tall, and I had budgeted $300 to $350 to get her a really nice, expensive bike that would last her years. We went to a fancy bike shop where we found the one. The salesman reassured us that even though it was an adult bike, with a few adjustments, it would fit her perfectly, and last her for years, but my husband said no. It's too big, she won't get it, even though she was riding the bike around. She needs to get a smaller one. We'll get the bigger one later. Mind you, he wasn't paying for the bike. And of course, true to his nature, he wasn't thinking long-term. I felt frustrated, stalled, stuck between a rock and a hard place, trying to make a good, conscientious, fiscally responsible decision as a mom, and trying to be a good wife. Trying to make him feel like a man and feel included in the whole process, but extremely frustrated, unseen, unheard, and alone in trying to be the responsible adult. I guess the anger came later when I knew that allowing the wrong decision at that time would cost more, and it did. But I caved. Trying to be a good wife, I listened and we bought the smaller bike. 6 months later? Yes. 6 months later. Can you guess what happened? Yup. My daughter had already outgrown the expensive kid's bike and her knees were hitting the handlebars. Of course, when it came time to buy another new bike, he didn't offer a cent. And I never asked, because to me, I shouldn't have to ask because the reason I had to buy another bike so soon was because of him. Also, even if I did ask, approval was never guaranteed. I wasn't making the same amount 6 months later, And so I was frustrated because what I predicted was going to happen happened. With less money, we had to look for a lesser bike than the one she could have had. I tucked my frustration away, folded it up neatly like a receipt for a return I'd never make. I didn't fight him. I didn't stand up for the long-term plan I knew we needed. I just swallowed it. One more compromise in a marriage that kept demanding smaller and smaller pieces of me. If I could go back and talk to that version of myself in the bike store, I'd tell her, trust your instincts. Don't worry about his feelings. He's a grown man-child. Do what's best for you, your child, your budget, and both of your futures. I heard something once. When we don't trust our instincts as adults, it often goes back to an earlier time in our lives, when we had to shut down that voice to survive someone else's control. So to her, I'd say, this is not your fault, but you don't have to keep repeating it. Anyway, fast forward a few months and we decided to go camping, to get outside, be away from screens, and spend time together cheaply. Since my daughter and I had bikes, he said he also needed a bike, which leads us into bike story number 2. Now I plan for big purchases. I save. I check budgets. He lives on 100% commission checks. Unpredictable, feast or famine. And fight as I might, we have never seen eye to eye on budget or planning. So how did he buy his bike? Buy now, pay later credit. No budgeting, no certainty. Just swipe now, worry later. And how did I find out? Months later, when we tried once again to work on the budget, I found out the bike had cost over $1,000. Money we didn't have. He had hidden it. I usually don't find out about his purchases until it's too late to say no, until the payments hit, whether we could afford them or not. While my purchases require a full justification presentation, discussion, and review beforehand. When I learned about the $1,000 camping bike later, my first emotional reaction was disgust. I was tired of trying to point out how these decisions weren't growing our future. Ultimately, I guess I do feel betrayed, because it is these types of decisions that do nothing to build the future we had promised to each other. And for bike story number 3, I will admit we loved camping. We enjoyed exploring, cooking outside, and nature walks as a family. This is the good side. Vacationing is always the good side. Of course, we also enjoyed riding our bikes as a family. But the hills? Brutal. One day, I saw a couple zipping around on electric bikes and said to my husband, "Hey, that is what I need." His response was an immediate shutdown. "You don't need that." No further discussion. He wasn't even willing to pretend it was possible. When I got home, I looked at the electric bikes anyway and tried to share, but he wasn't even willing to look. And when he finally agreed to look at bikes, it was performative. A trip to nowhere. No budget. No plan. No intent to buy. Just another door closed in my face. In that moment, I didn't feel sad or mad. I felt dismissed. Like my wants, dreams, and goals weren't even worth pretending to listen to. Just unimportant. It hit me again. I wasn't a partner. I was an employee submitting expense reports to the CEO of my own life. Sometimes he approved. Sometimes he didn't. Needs or wants, it didn't matter. It wasn't about what was right or fair. It was about whether he felt like it that day. And if he didn't, if I absolutely needed it or wanted it, I would borrow money from my mom. Another secret I kept to myself for years, again, another story. So basically, mine and my daughter's needs were hidden. I would just swallow my anger because there was no other option. It wasn't just the bikes. It was school supplies. It was clothes. It was putting necessities into my Amazon cart, waiting indefinitely until I got money to buy them without having to discuss or defend exactly how necessary the items actually were. It was whispering, "We'll see," to my daughter when I wanted to say yes. Always later. Never now. It was skipping a haircut. It was wearing worn-out shoes longer than I should. It was telling my daughter, maybe next week, while staring at her ripped socks. It was celebrating small wins like finally buying toiletries without having to have a discussion first. It wasn't about being poor. It was about being powerless. And it wears you down until you don't even recognize that it's happening. I don't think of myself as a victim. But I know now that love isn't supposed to look like this. Support isn't supposed to come with conditions. Freedom isn't supposed to be rationed. Peace in my body now is not taking on his feelings when making decisions, not taking on his mood, his point of view, or even opinion. I have freed myself physically, mentally, and emotionally from him. All that is left is financially. Well, and I guess on paper because we are still legally married, and again, that is another story for another time. I have not yet achieved financial freedom, but I am working desperately to get something in the way of finances. This hole is pretty deep and is not going to be reversed quickly. I'm still trying to remember that I deserve freedom without needing to justify it. I used to think freedom was being able to buy something you wanted. Now I know freedom looks like peace, like buying a bike when I want one, like saying yes without a silent calculation first, like building a life where my daughter never learns to second-guess her own needs. Now I know it's being able to decide for yourself without the feeling of seeking approval or feeling apprehension. And maybe that's why I'm telling this story. Maybe that's why I'm sharing the pieces, because this wasn't just about bikes. It was about everything they represented: control, dismissal, erosion. So if you've ever been made to feel like asking for your own dignity was too much, you're not crazy, you're not wrong, and you're not alone. This is just one part of my story. There's more to come. And some of it still hurts to tell, but hey, he gives me money for groceries most weeks. So clearly he's a nice guy.